Okay, welcome everyone to this deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we are plunging into something really fundamental. Habits.
Yeah, these automatic behaviors that, well, they run so much of our lives, don't they? Right from the moment we wake up. We're talking, everything from that effortless walk to the coffee machine to maybe that less effortless urge to check your phone the second you hear a ping.
Exactly. Like the invisible architecture of our day-to-day.
That's a good way to put it.
And so, in this deep dive, our mission, really, is to pull back the curtain on how these automatic things form.
Right. Understand their impact.
And importantly, dig into the science-backed strategies, using the sources you shared, for actually building better ones.
That's such a fascinating area because, we feel like we're always making conscious choices.
We do.
But yeah, a huge chunk of our day is actually driven by these automatic programs just running in the background.
So let's start right there then. What is a habit, fundamentally? Like beyond just something you do without thinking.
Well, at its most basic, it's a behavior that's become automatic through repetition. Simple as that on the surface.
Okay.
But what's really compelling is digging into the brain science. Researchers, like those at MIT, have pinpointed the basal ganglia.
The basal ganglia, right? And that part of the brain, isn't it also involved in things like emotions and memories?
Exactly.
What's the significance of that connection for habits? Seems important.
Oh, it's crucial. It means habits aren't just these, dry motor programs. They get tangled up with our feelings, our past experiences. And this is really where the idea of the habit loop comes in. Charles Duhigg popularized this in The Power of Habit.
The loop, okay, cue, routine, reward. Let's break that down. Maybe use that classic example from the sources.
Yeah, good idea. So think about feeling stressed at work. That feeling, the stress, that's the cue.
Got it. The trigger.
Right. And it triggers a specific routine, maybe walking over to the break room, grabbing a cookie.
Okay, the action.
And then the reward, that's the temporary relief maybe, or the pleasure you get from the sugar hit.
So cue.stress, routine.cookie, reward.feel better, briefly.
Precisely. And the more you repeat that, pairing the cue with the routine and getting that reward, the stronger that neural pathway becomes in the basal ganglia.
It's like you're carving a path in your brain.
You literally are wiring that connection. And here's where it gets, particularly tricky.
Yeah.
And interesting. Over time, your brain starts to anticipate the reward just from the cue itself.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the feeling of stress alone starts to trigger a craving for that cookie. It makes the routine feel almost automatic, maybe even irresistible before you've consciously decided anything.
Okay, so the brain's basically taking a shortcut.
Yeah.
It sees the cue, stress, and boom, it's already thinking about the reward, the relief, driving you to the cookie.
That's it.
Given how deep these loops can get, the obvious question is how on earth do you change them? Is it just sheer willpower, gritting your teeth?
Well, the science is pretty clear on that. Willpower helps, sure, but it's definitely not the whole picture, not for reliable long-term change anyway.
Why not?
It's like a muscle, you know? It's a finite resource. It gets tired, depleted throughout the day. So relying only on willpower to change a habit, it's kind of like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. You just can't sustain it.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, motivation waxes and wanes, doesn't it?
Totally.
So if it's not just willpower, what is the key? And related to that, how long does it actually take to form a new habit? People throw around that 21-day number a lot.
Yeah, that 21-day thing. It's largely a myth, really. It came from a misinterpretation of some much older observations.
Okay, so what's more accurate?
More robust research, like a study from University College London, actually tracked people trying to build new habits. They found the average time was closer to 66 days.
66. Okay, that feels a bit more realistic than 3 weeks.
And even that is just an average. Get this, the range in that study was huge.
Really?
Yeah, anywhere from 18 days for something simple like drinking a bottle of water with lunch.
Right.
All the way up to 254 days for more complex stuff, like consistently doing 50 sit-ups before breakfast.
Wow, 254 days. That's a long time.
It really highlights how personal habit formation is. It depends so much on the behavior, the person, the context.
Okay, so patience is key.
Yeah.
Definitely required.
Yeah.
But the actual strategy,
Yeah.
it isn't just about waiting 66 days, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about working with the loop.
Exactly. You can't always just eliminate the cue. Stress at work, for example, is probably going to happen again.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So the real power lies in changing the routine that the cue triggers. Keep the cue, keep the reward, switch the middle part.
Okay, so back to the stress and cookie example. Cue is stress. Instead of the automatic routine walk, cookie, You intentionally substitute something else.
Precisely. Maybe when you feel that stress cue, you stand up and do 5 deep breaths. Or you take a quick, 30-second walk to the water cooler and back.
Or listen to one song.
Yeah, anything that breaks the old pattern but still delivers some kind of reward.
So the brain still gets what it wants, that feeling of relief or a pause, but through a new, maybe healthier routine.
That's the core idea. You're not fighting the cue or the craving directly. You're just redirecting that energy down a different path. And that is what leads to sustainable change.
It's like rerouting a river, not trying to dam it up completely.
That's a great analogy.
That reframing is really powerful. Okay, now let's shift gears slightly. There's this concept of certain habits having this ripple effect. Keystone habits.
Yes, keystone habits. It's fascinating how establishing just one single behavior can start this cascade, this positive ripple effect, leading to changes you weren't even directly aiming for.
So they're like central pillars?
Kind of. They're habits that, once they're in place, seem to naturally encourage and support the formation of other good habits around them.
What are some classic examples the sources point to?
Well, regular exercise comes up again and again. When people start exercising consistently, even if that's the only thing they focus on, they often find themselves starting to eat better. Maybe without even trying that hard. They might sleep better too, have more energy, be more productive at work. It triggers other positive shifts.
Why? Why does exercise seem to have that kind of power? Is it just feeling better physically?
That's part of it, sure, but it seems to go deeper. One key idea from the research is that exercise can start to fundamentally shift your identity.
Your identity. How so?
You begin to see yourself differently. As an exerciser, maybe, or just generally a healthy person or someone who is disciplined.
I see.
And that subtle shift in self-perception makes other choices that align with that new identity feel more natural, easier, less like a struggle.
So the habit changes how you see yourself, and that new self-image then guides other positive behaviors. Like if I start running consistently, I might think, well, runners fuel their bodies properly, and suddenly eating better feels more congruent.
Exactly. It lines up. Another example often mentioned is journaling.
Journaling.
Yeah, just regularly writing down thoughts. Research suggests it can boost self-awareness, help you process emotions better, improve memory, help you prioritize.
And those things could then lead to better planning, less stress.
Right. It spills over. So the big strategic takeaway here is huge.
Which is?
If you're feeling overwhelmed, wanting to make big life changes, don't try to overhaul everything at once.
Yeah, that usually fails.
Instead, identify and focus intensely on establishing maybe just one keystone habit. Trust that it will start creating positive momentum elsewhere.
Focus the energy. That makes sense.
But it does raise a really practical question, doesn't it? What are the best tools for actually building these habits, keystone or otherwise?
Good point. And that brings us nicely to two really effective strategies mentioned in the sources. Habit stacking and environment design.
Ah, yes. These are gold. Deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful when you apply them.
Let's start with habit stacking. That term comes from James Clear, right?
It does, yeah, from Atomic Habits. The core idea is to leverage habits you already have locked in place, habits you do without thinking.
Okay, how does it work?
You basically attach the new habit you want to build directly onto an existing one.
Can you give us that classic example?
Sure. After I brush my teeth in the morning, that's the existing habit, I will do 5 minutes of stretching. That's the new habit.
So the existing habit, brushing teeth, becomes the cue, the trigger for the new behavior.
Exactly. It's already automatic, reliable. You don't need to remember a separate trigger. You just piggyback the new habit onto the old one.
That feels much easier than trying to remember, like, oh yeah, I meant to stretch today.
It takes the decision-making out of it, largely. And then there's environment design.
Which you mentioned earlier. This one feels underrated.
Totally underrated. But maybe the most powerful tool of all, honestly. The principle is just dead simple. Make the good habits, the desired ones, as easy and obvious as possible.
And the flip side.
Make the bad habits, the ones you want to break, as difficult and invisible as possible.
So you're basically engineering your surroundings for success.
You got it. You're designing your environment to nudge you in the right direction. The sources have some great, simple illustrations. If you want to read more, don't just intend to read more. Physically put the book you want to read on your pillow.
Can't miss it then.
Or right on the coffee table where you sit, maybe on top of the remote. Make it the easiest, most obvious thing to pick up.
And for breaking bad habits.
Yeah.
Like the junk food example.
Right. If you want to stop eating chips late at night, The most effective environment design isn't trying to resist the craving with willpower when they're right there in the cupboard. It's simply not having them in the house in the first place. You add friction, you make the routine harder, maybe impossible in the moment.
You eliminate the easy path to the undesired routine.
Exactly. It bypasses so much of that need for moment-to-moment discipline. It's not about cheating, it's just smart. You're setting yourself up to win.
This whole emphasis on systems, on consistency, rather than just relying on feeling motivated.
Yeah.
It's really highlighted by that study you mentioned earlier.
Ah, yes. The 2018 study in the journal Obesity. It's a fantastic real-world illustration of this.
Remind us what they found.
So researchers followed people who were trying to lose weight. And the key finding, the really interesting part, was who succeeded most.
Okay.
It was the individuals who focused on building and sticking to consistent daily routines. Things like eating their meals at roughly the same times each day, or being really diligent about logging their food intake consistently.
So routine builders.
Exactly. They achieved significantly greater weight loss compared to others.
And crucially, they didn't just lose more weight initially. They kept it off longer, too.
That's the kicker. They maintained that weight loss more effectively than the participants who might have had, bursts of high motivation but didn't have that consistent structure, those ingrained habits.
Wow. That really drives it home, doesn't it? Habits. Those consistent, almost automatic behaviors.
Yeah.
They're just more reliable than motivation in the long run.
Absolutely. Because motivation, like I said, it comes and goes. It's fickle. But a habit, once it's built, it's there. It works even when you're tired, stressed, or just totally uninspired.
It shifts the whole focus, doesn't it? From how do I get motivated to do this?
Right.
To how do I make this behavior essentially automatic so I just do it regardless of how I feel?
That's the goal. That's the power of habits.
Okay, so let's try and distill all of this down.
Yeah.
What are the key actionable things for you listening right now to take away and actually use?
Okay, first one, thinking back to that UCL study and the huge range. Be patient.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Real habit change takes time. Don't beat yourself up if it doesn't stick immediately. It's a process.
And link that patience to starting small. Please start small.
Yes. Trying to change 5 major things at once, it's usually a recipe for disaster.
Pick 1, maybe 2, max. Focus your energy there first. Get some small wins under your belt. That builds momentum.
Definitely. And think about James Clear's formula. Make the habits obvious, easy, and satisfying.
Obvious, easy, satisfying.
Yeah. Make the cue visible. That's environment design. Make the action itself require minimal effort. That's environment design again, or habit stacking.
Okay.
And find some way to make completing it feel good, even in a small way. That's the satisfying part. Maybe tracking it, maybe a tiny immediate reward. Rely on design more than discipline.
I love that. Design over discipline. And tracking progress.
Yeah.
You mentioned that. Even just making a mark on a calendar each day you do the habit. That can be surprisingly motivating, right?
It really can. It makes your consistency tangible, visible. You see the chain building and you don't want to break it. It provides that little dopamine hit of accomplishment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe the most important tip of all, embrace imperfection.
Ah, yes. The all or nothing trap.
Exactly. You will miss a day. It happens to everyone. That doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you should just give up.
So what's the key then?
The difference, honestly, between people who succeed long-term and those who don't often comes down to this. They don't quit when they slip up. They just get back on track the next day or the next opportunity.
Consistency over perfection. That has to be the mantra.
It really is. That feels like the absolute heart of successful habit building.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I hope it's clear that this power of habits, it's not magic. It's not some innate personality trait you either have or don't.
No, not at all. It's based in the science of how our brains work, how they learn and automate things to be more efficient.
And building a life that feels,
Yeah.
more intentional, more aligned with your goals. It isn't about being perfectly disciplined every single second.
It's about strategically, thoughtfully installing those automatic behaviors, those systems that serve you well in the long run.
Start small. Make it easy. Be consistent.
And trust the process. It really is how lasting change happens.
So as you think about everything we've talked about, the habit loop, those keystone habits, stacking, designing your environment, maybe consider this question.
What's one small, specific habit you could realistically start building this week, maybe even today, that could make a genuine difference for you?
And crucially, how can you make doing it ridiculously easy?
Great question to ponder. Until next time, everyone.
Stay curious, keep building those positive loops, and trust in that power of consistency.